Here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily, your daily dose of sunshine. I'm Mokwa Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makede. Well, it's cool. 27 degrees here in Lagos, but don't let that fool you. Could rise up to 31 degrees later in the day. Welcome to the program. Today is June 5, and most certainly, Mokwe, the countdown to Salah hasn't only begun, it's really high up there this morning. A lot of traffic on our side of town. On the one hand, those who are leaving town. On the other hand, those who are going to purchase rams for the Salah at just at the Kara market. But hey, who's going to complain, right?
People have to get what they'll get, you know, Ayo, and it's a good thing. We have to be happy for them that at least they can celebrate Salah. But while they're celebrating Salah, I do hope that we spare a thought for the people of Mokwa town who are still trying to pick up the pieces after the devastating flood that hit them last week. It's interesting that today is World Environment Day, and we'll be focusing a bit more on the environment, especially with the impact of the floods in Mokwa and the warning that has now been released by the Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation. But this you're seeing on your screen is an aerial shot of Mokwa town and the devastation it left, the floods left in its wake after it hit the town of Mokwa. We understand the Vice President was there yesterday, promising, you know, some relief for those who have been affected by the flood. But you can see, Ayo, from what we understand, about 300 houses affected, over 1,000 people displaced by this, and we know that 161 people at the last count have lost their lives. As of yesterday, we're told that search and rescue operations were still going on, as a number of people were still unaccounted for. So, and we know that there will be people there who are also, you know, trying to prepare for the Salah in spite of it all, because, you know, Salah is almost like Christmas. The day comes and you just have to find a way to celebrate. So I'm hoping that, you know, as we celebrate Salah as a country, that we spare a thought for the people of Mokwa. Maybe lend a hand. I don't know how it works, but I'm sure that, you know, there are organizations that might be able to raise some relief efforts and say, you know what, this year we're spending with the people of Mokwa. But if we cannot go there, if we cannot send anything, at the minimum, we can send our prayers. Ayo.
Well, no one can argue with that, Mokwe, particularly because it's one of those things that's happened over time. In this particular community, as far back as 2012, we understand that about 23 square kilometers of rice-producing land were washed away, significantly impacting food production in this particular town. And of course, in 2016, there was also that report of flooding in September of that particular year, and it affected about 24 communities right there. Last year, October or thereabout, we were talking about the flooding in Kogi State. Well, these things will happen, but whether or not we are significantly prepared for them, that's another thing altogether. I just saw a video, Mokwe, of a community in Texas, Dallas, Texas, that was also seriously flooded, and, you know, almost hovering over vehicles, cars, even SUVs in the town. So these things will happen. It is our capacity to respond, Mokwe, as you have advocated, that would also make all the difference. Because just as we were asking yesterday, Mokwe, how will these people come back? The people, not the government. How will the people come back from these devastating losses? Not just now, but for a very long time to come. Please, not just a thought, lend a helping hand to the people of Mokwa in Niger State. That's my take, Mokwe.
Well, Ayo, we understand the Vice President was there yesterday. We'll bring our viewers that report, to those who missed it, and some of the things that he said. We'll bring them that report as soon as we go on this break. We'll be back shortly. Please stay with us.
Residents in Mokwa town, Niger State, are still counting their losses after the devastating flood that left death and destruction in its wake. More than 4 communities have been affected by the disaster, with over 4,500 persons displaced, with 458 households impacted. The State Commissioner for Humanitarian Affairs put the death toll at 200 persons, with 186 persons injured. According to the state government, 265 buildings were damaged, while 2 major roads and 5 key bridges were washed away in the incident.
You can see here services are running. The mock screening is ongoing. There's antenatal services, antenatal care services here. There's the other tent is being used, to help educate people on basic hygiene, improve sanitation, water safety, so that people can protect themselves from drinking contaminated water. We also have psychosocial support going on for families that are affected.
The victims are asking for some kind of succor from the state and federal governments.
We need your help, because even me, myself, I had not saved with anything. Even shoe, hijab, nothing.
We lost about 14 people, including him. So in family now, we don't have anybody that we can say this one of my cousins here.
Vice President Kashim Shettima takes an aerial view of the devastation as he visits the community. The Vice President is leading the federal government delegation to assess the situation and commiserate with the people. He comes bearing goodies for the victims. The Deputy Governor gave him details of the devastation.
Presently, we have a 4 collapsed bridge. One is railway is here, one is here in Metropolis here, another one is just here that connected Islam Abubakar College of Agriculture with Mokwa here. Another one is there in Rabat there. The social and economic life of our people have been completely cut off.
The Vice President addressed the people, delivering the message of President Bola Tinubu to the victims, assuring them that the federal government is with them during this trying time.
The President has authorized the immediate release of 2 billion naira to immediately commence the construction of homes destroyed by the disaster. Immediately I will get back to Abuja, inshallah. I will authorize MD of Niger Delta Power Holding Company to make arrangements for a 14 MVA transformer for Mokwa town.
He is led through the rubble of what is left of the community by the Deputy Governor. He then discloses more gestures for the people.
We are going to rebuild the bridges. The federal government, under the able leadership of President Bola Tinubu, has already directed the federal Minister of Works to immediately embark on the reconstruction of the 4 destroyed bridges, which is a lifeline, actually, a major artery road that connects the south with the northern part of Nigeria.
The impact of the flood disaster in Mokwa is still very visible as the people struggle to put their lives together. The Vice President's visit has reignited hope in them, and they look forward to the fulfillment of all the promises made by the federal government. For now, they're counting their losses in terms of human lives and properties. From Mokwa in Niger State, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Well, that was the report filed by our correspondent, Emperor Simon, yesterday from Niger State. As we did mention, today, June the 5th, also marks World Environmental Day, a day set aside for the global observance dedicated to raising awareness and galvanizing action for environmental protection. So we're looking at all of this together, wondering if we had taken a little more care with environmental protection, would we have been able to avoid the disaster that we witnessed in Mokwa? These are key questions. Well, this morning we have joining us Jane Bevan, who is the Chief of WASH, that is the Water, Sanitation and Hygiene at UNICEF. Thank you so much for joining us, Jane.
Pleasure to be with you.
So this is the situation that we have on our hands, and every year, I mean, I don't know when we started marking the World Environmental Day, but I'm sure that it's not something we've been doing. I'm sure it's something we've done for over a decade now.
Yes.
So one has to ask, you know, how has awareness about environmental issues contributed to raising awareness to avoiding situations like this?
Well, thanks for the question. World Environment Day has been a long-standing event, if you like, on the international calendar, and it does help to really bring thoughts and awareness around environmental issues to the fore. And I think now, more than ever, with the impacts that we're seeing of climate change, it's a really important issue that we cannot ignore in this country. Nigeria has been seen, and particularly the children of Nigeria are the most impacted, one of the top 10 countries in the world most affected by climate change impacts. So
one of the top 10, you said?
Yes, one of the top 10 countries. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure that you're looking at the visuals. You've seen the pictures of the devastation that has hit Mokwa. What exactly is running through your mind as head of WASH at UNICEF?
Well, obviously, my heart goes out to all the families affected, and I know that UNICEF team was on the ground as soon as they possibly could be mobilised from our Kaduna office. I saw my colleague Teresa there on the ground, helping with water treatment, helping with toilets and sanitation. These are some of the key issues that we need to put in place. Water treatment and safe sanitation to make sure that what's already a disaster doesn't turn into an epidemic. In situations like these, when water is unsafe, you know, disease can easily spread, and we don't need a cholera outbreak on top of all of this. So I think for me that is the first impact, is to make sure that we have no further deaths as a result of this disaster. I mean, what springs to mind is that we have floods every year. This is not a new thing, but what is new is the intensity. Sometimes I think, and this has been predicted by all of the climate change models, that all of the extremes will be more extreme. So we'll have hotter summers, we'll have wetter rainy seasons, and we'll have bigger floods. So this is kind of the new normal, and we need to be adapting to this and really building communities to be more resilient to make sure that the impacts are minimized.
And that's going to be it's going to be a tough job. I mean, a really, really tough job, because we understand that, you know, given the warnings now that the National Emergency Management Agency has now issued, saying that over 1,000 communities in 30 states will be impacted by floods in this rainy season. And the resistance that oftentimes state governments get when they're telling people to move to higher ground, especially those who've built on floodplains or who are in the path of water, maybe even the memory path of water. It is a tough job ahead of all of us. But do you think that, you know, situations like this could reinforce it, could, you know, perhaps get people to understand the seriousness of the devastation that we're speaking of?
Yes, I think it is a wake-up call. Unless we want to see more situations like this, I would really encourage states, particularly riverine states, those that are on the borders of these large rivers that will flood, it's not a question of if, to ensure that people are not living in those floodplains, because that is where we're going to have the problems. So yes, I would really encourage people to take it seriously.
It's interesting. I mean, I find it very interesting. You are the Chief of WASH, and I know that before now, you know, WASH has been always about sanitation, about hygiene, and it doesn't seem like, yes, we've paid some lip service to it. We've had conferences on it. Sometimes you see a little action, but it doesn't seem that there is concerted effort to make sure that water is available in public places, for instance, schools, etc. For instance, these people were initially camped at a school, and you would imagine that, assuming that school had water, they would have no problems, you know, settling there. Part of the complaints we heard from you know, those who had been displaced, who were seeking relief and camped at a school, was that there was no potable water that they could use in the school. And so one has to ask sometimes, do you ever get tired of speaking about the importance of having things as basic as water in communities, in public places, such as schools, markets, hospitals, primary healthcare areas? Do you ever get tired of it?
That's my job, so I can't say I get tired of it, but I do sometimes get a little tired of the lack of response, but I will keep battering away and emphasizing the importance of safe water and of sanitation for basic public health. And it's the simplest, most effective primary healthcare intervention you can make is to wash your hands, for example. If you don't have access to water to even wash your hands, then you know there are knock-on effects going to a primary healthcare facility, for example. You're going to get sicker, not better, if people are passing on diseases because they haven't simply washed their hands. So there are some things that, no, I can't get tired of saying them because they're so fundamentally important to our everyday life.
Are there areas where you would say we're making progress?
There definitely are. Sanitation, the Clean Nigeria campaign, we're definitely improving. We now have about 20% of all of the LGAs that are open defecation free. I think it's 20%, the whole of Jigawa State, almost the whole of Katsina State.
The whole of Jigawa State is free of open defecation.
Yes.
That is something to celebrate.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. It's been like that for a couple of years now. And I believe there's several states that are not far behind. So Kaduna is very close. Like I said, Katsina is very close. Bauchi is not too far behind.
How do you measure that? Because I know that it's even something that afflicts even the Federal Capital Territory. So, being the Federal Capital Territory.
It's a huge piece of work, and you have to go household by household, community by community, and LGA by LGA. So we work on a LGA-wide process with the Clean Nigeria campaign, really to make sure, and then they get certified and verified as open defecation free once they're convinced that every household has a toilet.
And, well, I was going to say they have a toilet and they also wash their hands.
And using it and they're washing their hands, yes, absolutely.
Okay. But how come is it that, you know, even cities like the Federal Capital Territory aren't yet open defecation free?
So in FCT, I'd say it's a special case, and similarly to other large cities like Lagos, most households do have toilets, but the issue is public places. So if you're out and about, there are very few public toilets where you can actually go and relieve yourself. So often people have no option but to, you know, stop the car and go on the side of the road because there is no alternative. So what we need to see is more public toilets, and there's businesses to be, you know, and money to be made in these, in places like motor parks, like any gathering places, markets, where people get together and there is no facility. There's going to be open defecation, and then you start to get the spread of disease. So it's really important to focus, and we're working very closely with the FCT and the FCDA to develop more public toilets in Abuja specifically.
Well, I heard the Vice President say that, you know, 2 billion naira has now been approved by the President, you know, to rebuild homes and get people back on their feet, even though we have to be sure that they're not building the homes back in floodplains. But what are some of the things that you would also be asking the federal government to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think long term it's about planning, and town planning specifically, to make sure that there's enough safe land that isn't going to flood where people can build their houses. Because my guess is they went in the floodplain because there was nowhere else to go. So looking at town planning long term, but I think also emergency preparedness planning, because I would say, you know, floods are not a surprise. We get them every year. And so if we had more of a preparedness plan, we knew exactly what to do, and people were in place to do this, do that, and all of the steps were ready, and all of the materials were ready, so chlorine, for example, and the other materials needed, then we would respond much more quickly and much more effectively.
Well, I understand my colleague Ayo has questions for you. Open out to you, Ayo.
Well, thank you, Mokwa. Madam, thank you for all of the enlightenment, but I just have one or two questions. First one is, I mean, this day, the World Environment Day, has been celebrated since 1973. And yet we still have struggles with environmental issues. It's the level of enlightenment or awareness that I would like you to speak to. We celebrate this every year, but it would seem like every year things tend to get a little worse until certain calamities such as the one that we have on our hands comes up. And this is not just a Nigeria thing, it's something that happens all over the world from what we know. Whether or no weather, we knew that the environment was always important, yet it would seem like we don't take the kind of, we're not as aware or as enlightened about the environmental issues that will arise if certain things are not done. What's your understanding of the level of awareness of the average human, and more specifically the average Nigerian, about environmental issues?
Well, thanks for the question. I agree, it does sound a little frustrating, but to be honest, people are often aware of what immediately affects them. And so particularly if you're an urban dweller, for example, you may not be so aware of the impacts that we're having in the broader country on the environment. So I think UNICEF's been working with the Ministry of Environment particularly, but also the National Council on Climate Change, to be really doing a lot with young people to raise awareness around these issues. And today I know all over the country there's going to be loads of different events marking World Environment Day and planting trees. And I even understand in Enugu there's going to be an effort to break the Guinness World Record for the most trees planted. And I believe young people and the new generation, which is so exciting because we're such a youthful country here in Nigeria. And so it's fantastic to have more people being aware of the climate change issues and how they can help to mitigate some of the problems.
Well, still talking about the awareness, level of awareness or lack of it. Speak to the theme of the year. In Lagos, in Lagos State, there is that war, so to speak, against the use of single-use plastics in the city. And now, this year, the theme of this whole conversation about the World Environment Day is putting an end to plastic pollution. Maybe there is a need for us to understand the severity of the problem. Help us understand it so that maybe some other state governments all over the nation might be able to see how severe this is and probably also recommendations of what to do and options to take.
Thank you so much for the question. You're absolutely right. The theme is about plastic pollution, and it is a huge problem all over the world, not just in Nigeria. And different countries have taken different steps to reduce plastic pollution. And of course, banning single-use plastics, particularly, for example, shopping plastic bags, but also plastic cutlery, drinking straws, all of these things that we use once and then throw away, is not helping. And my understanding from the Minister of Environment himself is that Nigeria has actually banned single-use plastic, but that not many states have taken up the law, as it were, except for Lagos, which is really showing the way. So thank you, Lagos, for that. I think other states, I would really urge you to do more to consider banning plastic bags, or at least charging for them, so that people think twice about taking a plastic bag if it's not absolutely necessary, and bringing their own reusable bag from home whenever they go shopping.
Well, one of the reasons that Lagos has adduced to banning the single-use plastics is that it is reason or cause for flooding in a good number of cases. And that, of course, has been a perennial problem in different parts of the country.
Yes.
Now, back to the Mokwa conversation that you and Mokwa started with, as you said, and as Mokwa has also corroborated, it's an annual thing. We know that there's going to be torrential flooding. We've heard this since the last quarter of last year, and it's been repeated about a month or two ago. What needs to be done now? What difficult decisions need to be taken? What proactive measures would you recommend, particularly as the coming days gush out more rainfall?
Yes, well, as I mentioned before, I think it's really about preparedness and being ready, knowing in the past where the floods have been, and there are maps from agencies like NIMET that show us where we can expect floods this year. They have a whole forecast, and looking at these forecasts and getting all of the emergency response in place, like I mentioned before. So making sure we have supplies, like chlorine for treating the water, for example, and all of the other measures that need to be in place to make sure that people can respond quickly and efficiently. Yes, there is likely to be flooding, but we can minimize the impact if we prepare. And so I would really urge all people living in riverine areas where they expect flooding to think about raising things off the ground, particularly, and moving out if you are in a floodplain, for example.
You know, part of what we've also heard, and I think the papers had it this morning, for those who are intervening in the situation in Mokwa, is that it's a bit overwhelming for those who have decided to go and help. You've heard that report as well?
Yeah.
So how confident are you? I know that your people are already on the ground. I mean, you've mentioned seeing your colleague there. We've seen very boldly UNICEF colors, and we have to thank UNICEF for the work that they're doing on the ground there. But how confident are you that, you know, that community will not suffer any epidemics, no breakouts of any diseases, given, well, I said, the interventions that have now, you know, been done in those areas?
Well, I think the fact that we have response on the ground, and I would like to emphasize that UNICEF was on that clip, but there are other agencies there as well responding, not least the State Emergency Management Agency, which I think is responding very well. But I would say that it all kind of depends on how quickly we're able to get people into more permanent housing conditions and with safe water and decent toilets so that diseases don't spread. But there's every reason to be confident that with that support on the ground that should not happen. But we have to be also aware that there could be more floods coming.
Indeed. I mean, the rains are not over now.
Exactly.
But, you know, is that what some of the aid agencies on the ground there will be pushing for? How quickly to resettle those who are currently in the camps? Or do they think that this should be held up until, you know, the rains are over?
No. I think you have to act immediately and rehouse people, even if temporarily, away from the area, so that the area can be cleaned up and that people can access safe water.
What would you be urging state governments, you know, generally about WASH? I mean, you've said Jigawa, and I think we need to put that up, that yes. Jigawa is now open defecation free. And I mean, if they've done the work, they certainly deserve the praise. What would you be telling other state governments right now to be doing with regards to sanitation? And this notice that NEMA has now given that about 30 states will be affected by floods this year.
Yes. So sanitation is like I said, one of our primary defense barriers against disease. And it's so important, and it becomes more important at times like these when we have very heavy rainfall. So I would really urge all states to prioritize the coverage of sanitation. I know there is huge commitment in some states like Enugu, in Benue, for example, really strong commitment and work is being done. But there are other states that really have not shown much interest in improving
and
sanitation.
You're not ready to mention their names now,
No, I'm not, but you know who you are.
Okay, well, I hope they know themselves and, are doing something in that regard, because we certainly know how this also affects death rates when we now begin to talk about cholera outbreaks, which now seems very embarrassingly, or would I say shamefully, a yearly occurrence as well. But we certainly will keep tabs with what is happening in the area of water and sanitation and also hygiene. But we have to thank you very much for coming on the program this morning. Jane Bevan is the Chief of WASH, that is Water, Sanitation and Hygiene at UNICEF.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll take a break now and we'll be back shortly to look at other matters that have happened during the week. Please stay with us.
We have what we call our total spectrum maritime strategy, which identifies our operations to be conducted in 5 spectrums. One of those spectrums is land operation. And this is because the Navy is expected to provide what we call civil aid to military aid to civil authority and aid to civil power. That's why we are deployed in almost 30 states of the Federation in support of the Army and the police in fighting insecurity. That's why we are deployed in Maiduguri, Lake Chad, the Northwest, Northeast, South, everywhere in that particular role of provision of aid to civil authority. And we identified that because of our very few numbers, that we are having limitations with respect to being able to provide the much needed force. We also have limitations with respect to providing personnel who are adequately trained to fight on land, being that our orientation is maritime based. So the Special Operations Command and the Marines that we're establishing, they're essentially to be able to train people who can fight on land in line with our total spectrum maritime strategy. We're already doing it, but we want to do it better. And why have we chosen Makurdi? Of course, you know the River Benue is a vast expanse of landmass and the insecurity that is taking place in those areas. And also you notice that the elements of that command will not all be in Makurdi. For instance, the Navy base in Lake Chad will be a unit of that command. The Navy base in Shagunu will also be a unit of that command. So many of the units that are fighting on land, for instance, also our Special Boat Service, all those units will be part of the command. So the command is essentially to provide a coordinating framework for all our special forces operations that are supposed to contribute in provision of internal security and civil aid to military aid to civil power.
Well, Mr. Laolu Akonde joins us now, and we're going to start our discussion from the area of security. You just heard the Chief of Naval Staff, give an update on some of the things that the Navy is doing to ensure that Nigeria's waters, Nigeria's coastal areas are safer. But yesterday we were told that the Chief of Army Staff has now relocated to Benue as a result of the current crisis going on in some areas in Benue State. And there are questions as to what results this will achieve, because let's not forget that before now, I think it was in 2015 when the Commander-in-Chief, then President Muhammadu Buhari, asked his chiefs, his security chiefs, to move to Maiduguri to make sure that the Boko Haram crisis, which was then raging, which we also understand is resurgent now, was stemmed and brought under control. And some people said, well, results were achieved, even though Borno State and the Northeast in general remained an ongoing concern. So will this achieve a permanent result in Benue State? These are some of the questions that we will be asking this morning. Mr. Laolua Konde is the host of Inside Sources. Welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Good morning, Mokwa.
It's good to see you. Good to see you too. I heard you and Kayla, discussing the other day, and I wished I was there in the studio today.
Well,
I'm back
today.
here today. Yes,
Great.
indeed. So this is what we have now heard, because it would seem that the flood situation in Mokwa has taken attention somewhat. I mean, has taken the attention of the media, as it rightly should. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about 160 lives here. Yeah. Every life is important, and we also understand that lives too have been lost in Benue as a result of the security situation there. We had heard that sometime in March, April, Benue and Plateau were in focus. It was saying that, there was some intervention. The NSA visited Benue State, and things calmed down somewhat. Even Plateau State too, things seem to temper down. But in recent times, we have now heard a resurgence. Right. And there are questions as to what exactly is happening. But it would seem that the Chief of Army Staff is not waiting to be asking questions. He wants to be there to see what exactly is happening by himself. How optimistic are you that this would achieve different results from what we have been seeing before now?
Okay, so I think that it is a good thing that the Chief of Army Staff felt the need to go and see things for himself, because particularly in Benue, it has become a very serious case of impunity. A lot of the communities there speak about the fact that those killings actually has not stopped. It may taper down and then come back. And many of them speak to the fact that the invaders, the intruders, whatever we call them, they have acquired a certain level of audacity that that nobody can stop them, and lives continue to be lost. People are being killed, land are being taken over. So it's a very serious situation that is happening in Benue State, particularly, and Plateau. So I like the fact it is reassuring that you have the Chief of Army Staff saying that, look, I'm just going to go and see what is happening here. What we then hope will happen is that this won't just be a touch and go situation. We hope that the Chief of Army Staff will ensure that there are enough people on the ground to prevent this recurring decima of loss of life, of killings, of brutal and very despicable attacks on innocent communities. So we hope, as some reports have suggested, that this is not just a visit and then it comes back. I don't know whether...
they said it's a relocation. That's what we were told.
Well, okay, so we hope there is a relocation, and what that should mean is that the military, there's going to be a serious attention paid to what is happening there, because these are also Nigerians, these are citizens, they have a right to life. What is happening in Benue and Plateau is it must compel all of us to ensure that we stop it. So yeah, good news that the Chief of Staff felt that's a very important thing to focus on.
It's even more important when you now look at the fact that, when you hear the narrative that has been coming out of that place. If our correspondent was on the ground in some of those communities, and what you will see is a desertion of the towns. Yeah. People are carrying their things and are leaving en masse. And what they always report is that when they leave, other people come and settle in their places, So there are questions as to, and as a result of that, you consistently hear this thing of it's an agenda. What they're trying to do is take over our lands, grab our lands. And you heard the governor of Plateau State when he said that this is a genocide. Right? And these are some of the things, this narrative that has remained, particularly within the North Central region. People will be asking, is it that we're powerless to do anything about it? Is the government deaf to some of the narratives that have come out from the North Central region, the Middle Belt area? Or is it that they consider themselves powerless? Or is it that they don't see? Because that was part of the failings. That was part of the accusations leveled against President Muhammadu Buhari, especially given the fact that those who were the marauders, people kept on saying, they're Fulani people. These are some of the things that you have to ask, how does government react when they hear some of these conspiracy theories I don't want to know. I don't want to say they're conspiracy, but some of these theories. Let me leave them at theories.
Theories, yeah.
Because people who experience it, you know, have a right to interpret it however it is they deem fit.
Yeah, I mean, the very important point that you made, Mokwa, that bears reputation is the fact that when these marauders, intruders, whatever we call them, when they come and attack a community and people, you know, run for their lives, you know, we have instances, people have spoken about how when they come back, their houses have been taken over. Other people are living in their houses, not just the land where they do their farming and stuff. And they are right in front of their, I met a particular person from, I think in Benue, that said, right in front of his house, and he just couldn't go in. I mean, he didn't even have the courage to even claim his own house that he built, and people are living there. You know, the marauders.
So you've met someone like that?
Yeah, oh yes. I mean, actually, right here in the studio, you know, and of course, the person was telling me the story after the show. I said, you should have mentioned this during the show. So there are people, our people in this part of the country, not, particularly Benue and Plateau. What they are going through is below par. We should not have government, and not just government, even all of us as a people. This is something that should really bother us. We should really, really be bothered about that kind of conduct, where people's land and homes are taken away, and the people who took it illegally, people who killed to take it. I mean, is this a conquest that is going on or what? And I challenge not just the government, I challenge our religious leaders. I challenge the traditional rulers. That's the reason why we have leaders in communities. Why do we have this so much silence? We need to scream, and we need to scream out very loudly about what is happening in Benue and Plateau. It's terrible. It's terrible. And you know, we must put the focus on this matter and stop this kind of behavior, this kind of conduct. It's as if that place is targeted, and some people want to take it over by force of arms. You know, it reminds you of the history that we were taught of conquest. You know, but Nigeria is a free nation, and the people in Benue and people in Plateau, they are citizens. And they have fundamental human rights, which are being, you know, flagrantly violated by these intruders.
And what I always, you know, what always alarms me is how it is described within the, you know, security sector. It's communal clash. You know, farmers, herders clash. And for sometimes we see that it doesn't quite cover what it is that these people are describing.
It doesn't. You know, I would think that a reasonable theory, you know, based on what I have seen and known, a reasonable theory must be the fact that there is an agenda, clearly. Now, we don't know who are behind. This is the kind of thing that our intelligence, you know, agencies are supposed to sort out. But anybody that denies that there is no agenda is a waste of time. There is an agenda. Some people are trying to do some things. There's no doubt about that. That is as clear as daylight. You know.
Yeah, I think that also ties into what it is that the Minister of Defense said. Even he visited Benue recently, and he said that, you know, something very dangerous is happening in the Sahel region, and that also explains the resurgence of Boko Haram, which we're seeing in the northeast of the country. I don't know if, as citizens, so while government might have that information, what the question for me is, how do they then galvanize citizens' awareness in such a way that we are aware but also ready for whatever it is that these people with their agenda, we don't know who they are, might throw our way?
Yeah, so, well, the people in Benue and Plateau, they are aware of what is going on. They are especially some of those communities, they are the victims. So they already understand. I mean, just like the example that we cited of people who were scared away, and then when they thought that there was peace, came back, but they couldn't take over their land, they couldn't take over their houses. Other people are already living there illegally. They have nothing, no resort. You know, there are instances where, you know, some of the attackers were identified by people in the community. They identified them that these are the attackers, and then they were arrested, and then they are back in the community. And they're boasting that, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get rid of you guys. You know, I mean, people have these experiences. Nigerians living in those states, they have this experience. They are talking about it. So they are already aware of it. It is those of us that are outside Benue and Plateau that we need to, educate ourselves and don't ignore what is happening in those places. We shouldn't ignore what is happening. If we raise our voices enough, the government will have to step up its game. While we were serving, some of the sentiments that we shared internally was that if somebody like President Buhari, being a military person and coming from that ethnic group, that most people suspected, are involved, that maybe he should be the one to solve the problem because those people will respect him. That didn't happen, much as they tried, but we couldn't conclusively finish it. It is now up to the president, the current president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to please consider this as an affront on the very idea of Nigerians living in peace, the right of those people to life. So the president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, must end this problem. A governor has already told us that it's a genocide. That's a big deal. It has international implications. The International Criminal Court can then come in, people can go there. We don't need to go to that extent. We can put a stop to it. And we need more troops. And we'll be talking about this. We need more troops on the ground, whether it's police or military. We need more troops so that those places can be secured. If you have the presence of more military people, maybe it will become more difficult for these intruders to operate the way they like.
Well, we'll see, just how the presence of the Chief of Army Staff, what difference it makes, his presence, his relocation to Benue State. We have to thank you, as always, for coming on the program. Laolo Akonde is the host of Inside Sources and a former presidential aide. Well, that's Sunrise Daily this beautiful Thursday morning. We hope you stay safe out there. I hope that you imbibe all that you have heard with regards to hygiene and also finding a way to lend a hand to the people in Mokwa of Niger State. Thank you for watching. I'm Mokwa Yusuf.
I was going to close with that very line, Mokwa. Let's lend a hand. Private, individuals, corporate organizations, to the people of Mokwa in Niger State. We're all one. We're all Nigerians. Have a wonderful rest of your day and a beautiful celebration.